I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. So I saw this funny video clip the other day. It's from 1995, and it's David Letterman interviewing Bill Gates. And in this clip, Bill Gates is trying to explain to David Letterman what the internet is.
But you know, I think about this, and what about this internet thing? Do you know anything about that?
Sure.
What the hell is that exactly?
Well, it's
hilarious because David is completely skeptical. He is, admitting his ignorance and making fun of the idea of the internet and being able to send email, or why is it such a big deal that you can listen to a baseball game online when we have the radio?
A baseball game. You could listen to a baseball game on your computer. And I just thought to myself, does radio ring a bell? You know what I mean?
And so he's just laughing at this new technology. And of course now, years later, we're able to look at that and scoff at how short-sighted that viewpoint is, because obviously this technology has completely revolutionized every part of our lives. But I bring up this clip because as you listen to today's podcast and my interview, you are going to be tempted to feel skeptical like David Letterman, because I'm talking to two Gen Zers, an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old, and they are going to be explaining blockchain technology. They're going to be explaining what a DAO is, what an NFT is, what Web3 is, what solarpunk is. And you're going to hear a lot of terms and a lot of concepts that might be really new to you. And even if they're not new to you, even if you've been hearing a buzz about all these things, I mean, everybody's talking about cryptocurrency and everybody has an opinion. It will be tempting to write it off and maybe scoff at it and really sound a lot like David Letterman in 1995, dissing the internet. But I want to encourage you to listen and to learn from these two young people. They're really impressive. Madison Adams, age 19, and Oliver Yehlik, age 18. Madison is the co-founder of the Dream DAO, which trains Gen Z to use Web3 to change the world. And again, we're going to define all those terms in this interview. And Oliver, who is a participant in the Dream DAO. And I learned so much from this conversation, but more than just learning, it was so encouraging for me to hear these two young adults who are embracing not just this technology, but really a vision of what could be a positive future, a positive use of this technology. And so if for any reason you have recently been tempted to give up on the next generation or to be skeptical of new innovations, I think you will really be encouraged by what you hear. Here's my conversation with Madison and Oliver. Madison and Oliver, welcome to the Clear and Loud podcast. It's so good to have you both.
Hello, it's great to be here.
Hello. Thank you.
Oliver, I love the fact that you are sitting outside in Minnesota and we are enjoying the sound of birds in the background.
I'm very happy to be able to join everybody in these conversations.
Well, I love the fact that I am talking to two people who you could be my kids. I have kids that are your same age. And so it's actually super inspiring and from one generation to another, humbling in a wonderful way to be talking to you and to be learning about some of the projects that you're working on, the technology that you are a part of. and really just be able to learn. So thanks for being willing to have this conversation. As I was even like reading over your bios, it was so funny because I just thought, you know what? There are so many words in this description of what Madison and Oliver are a part of that people will not even understand.
Yeah.
Or they will have heard terms, in different ways and have different impressions of things, but will not really have a grasp of. And so I thought it would be great if we could just start with walking through some basic terms to give us sort of a knowledge base for the conversation. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. That's a good idea.
Well, so I'll just start at the kind of foundation. What is blockchain technology, and how is it changing the way that the world is working and technology is working?
I'm a visual learner. So the way that I like to understand this is through a visualization. So picture in your head a spreadsheet. That's kind of the way you can think about blockchain. Each cell in the spreadsheet is kind of like an individual block. And instead of it just, I guess, being like in sync with Google, it's a distributed ledger that's tracked by, tons and tons of computers. So it's like and instead of it being something that you can change, if you give someone sharing permissions on a spreadsheet, it's immutable. You can't change it. So it's an immutable, transparent record, a ledger. And so that's kind of the way that I think about it in my head.
That's a great visual and a great explanation. People will hear the term Web3 being thrown around. What is the kind of new era of the web that blockchain is making possible?
One of the examples that you see thrown around on Twitter a lot is Web3 really is this progression from Web 1 and then Web 2. So Web 1, you're looking at just being able to read off the internet, so you can look up a web page, you can look at what's on that web page, and that's all you can do. And then going to Web 2, where we are sort of like right now, and then moving into Web 3, is you can go on your web page, you can log in, you're on Twitter, you can post your tweet, people can interact with that tweet. And that's sort of the extent, but that interaction is owned by that parent company that's Twitter or, whatever you're using to interact online. So Web 3, that transition really is being able to not only consume content on the internet and create your own content, but own that content in a digital native way. You can purchase the content that you really enjoy, but that's a very simple understanding. Where Web3 is really cool, I think, sort of in my perspective, is being able to support things that you really love. So the Dream DAO, you can get the Skywalker's NFT. And with that Skywalker's NFT, you can become a member of the Dream DAO, but you're also creating funds for Dream DAO builders like myself, who can use that to, really explore and create and do whatever that organization you're supporting, is up to.
I love it.
I really like the term Web3 because it emphasizes that this is just the next phase of the internet. Right. So I want you to think about it like Web 1 or Web 2 or just the internet. If you were alive when the internet was becoming a thing, think about when you were at that point in time before there was this mass adoption, and then think about how much everything changed in every way. From the way we work, new jobs were created. From the way we do school, school is online now for some people. Yeah. And you should think about Web3 in the same way. It's the next phase of the internet that's going to change our lives in so many ways, in ways that we can't even begin to understand. So it is this, it's this next big phase that we can't even really fathom what's going to be like leveled up and changed as a result of it.
No, that's such a good reminder. The early days of the internet where you're just looking at basically an electronic brochure. You're reading the website of a company. we could not have fathomed the idea that this technology would create things like Uber or smartphones or,
Yeah.
you know, all the ways
Yeah.
that our lives have been completely changed. And like right now, Web3 and blockchain technology can seem like, well, what's so useful about that? Like, why do I want to be able to,
Yeah.
buying an NFT, who cares about a picture of an ape or whatever, right? So, but this is just the early days. Like, who knows all the ways that this will transform the way we think and interact with each other and work together. Oliver, you mentioned NFTs. Would you, or you both are welcome to do this, would you just give a quick explanation of what an NFT is?
I have an example that I like for this. So NFT, it's like really frustrating all of the acronyms in Web3, but I'll
That's
just
true.
share with you what it stands for because it connects to the example I'm going to say. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. And so that kind of brings up the question, what is a token? So a token is something that you can switch one for one. So if I have a dollar bill, Josh, I can switch the dollar bill with you. Like if you have a dollar bill, we can exchange them. So
Right.
that's a token. That's a fungible token, right? So a non-fungible token is something that I can exchange and get something of the same back. So it'd be like your passport or your driver's license. It's unique.
There's only one. Yeah.
Yes, there's only one. So NFTs are unique digital non-fungible tokens. And so often what that has manifested in so far is artwork. So people sell unique artwork through the blockchain. And it's basically a way to say, I am actually the owner of this.
Right.
Instead of having someone go and check if the signature is real and like a Van Gogh, it's actually verified on the blockchain. And there are more uses, and instead of it just being like someone selling their artwork, for example, I'm sure we'll talk more about our work in a second, but we fund our work through selling NFTs. So again, there's all these utilities that are super underexplored, but that's the basics.
Fantastic. All right. Madison, would you give me an explanation of what a DAO is? A DAO for people who maybe haven't heard that term before.
So you might be kind of in like a mini version of a DAO already if you're in like a Facebook group or something, because it's a DAO is basically an online community that uses blockchain technology. So the way that often is sometimes people will have a mission and they'll raise a pool of money and they'll use blockchain to decide how to allocate the money. They do votes on the blockchain to make their voting secure. But on a basic level, it's an online community of people who use blockchain to achieve a mission.
So what is unique about a DAO compared to that Facebook group or even, a committee in, in real life? What is the technology allowing people to do?
Yeah. Can I let the listeners in on a little secret about this?
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
So a little secret you'll learn about DAOs and Web3 is that it's not just about the technology. Part of the revolution with this is the culture that we're deciding to create and adopt. But there's this word that people in the space use called regen. Like, I'm a regen. I want to regenerate myself and others in the planet. And that kind of like embodies a spirit of like, we're going to try and do things better in many different ways. And the same thing, DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So while you may never be fully decentralized, autonomous, or organized, those acronyms give you ideals to strive for. And I think it makes people and organizations better. And that is something that is just so fascinating to me of like, we could have done this before, but because we have this technology, it's bringing us together in a way that is creating new norms and, setting new standards for what it looks like to organize as individuals and exist in a collective.
Well, what you're saying there, Madison, ties into my next question, which is to talk about Gen Z, because that's part of, what you are all about, this specific generation. For people who aren't, up on generational terms and labels, what is Gen Z and what are some of the attributes of Gen Z?
Yeah, basically your high schoolers and college students. Think about current high schoolers and college students. They're all Gen Z.
Yeah.
Current high schoolers and college students. What are some of the things that you think about your generation? What are some of the attributes that you think are lending to this kind of, we can do things better, we can use this technology in new ways, we can strive for something different? How would you speak about that, Madison?
So I would say part of the reason for the work that we do is we recognize that Gen Z is the generation of the future and Web3 is the technology of the future. So just those two things in and of themselves, I think, are grounds for having work around this and creating a pipeline for young people into this ecosystem. But I think there are also individual attributes that make Gen Z high potential for work in Web3. And one of them is we're one of the most socially conscious generations ever. I think what's really interesting is that a lot of our passion, we haven't found meaningful ways to channel it into action. So oftentimes the default is activism. The default is like the way that I signal that I care about something is posting about it or going to a protest. But I feel like people have this deeper longing to do more. And like Web3 is like all about building. And I think that's such an interesting under discovered dynamic is like, what does it look like to not only like, have Gen Z care about these issues, but what would it be like if we gave them the tools to actually do something about it too? So I think that's kind of like, part of what we're doing at Dream DAO is like we people are what we call civic first. So all the young people in the Dream DAO, they didn't come in being like coders and tech heavy. I mean, I know I wasn't. And they came in caring about issues. Some of them care about climate change. Some of them care about wealth inequality. And then they're like, I care about this issue. I'm going to learn about Web3 and learn how Web3 applies to the issue I care about. And to me, that's just so important. And again, another reason why I think the Gen Z is just so important.
That's incredible. It's really fascinating to think that the starting point for a lot of these Gen Z people is not necessarily the tech, but it's the desire to be a part of something, to build something, to enact change in different ways. And the Web3 technology is an incredible vehicle for that. If you enjoy this podcast, show some love to our sponsor, Beanfields. Beanfields are crunchy, mouth-watering chips with full-on flavor. And you can enjoy bag after bag because they're healthy. These plant-based chips are vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free, corn-free, and come in incredible flavors like sour cream, nacho, fiery hot, Korean barbecue, and ranch. They are positively addicting. Visit beanfields.com to order directly or just go to your local Whole Foods or natural food store. Madison, I want you to just now that we've talked about all of these things, we've talked about blockchain, we've talked about Web3, we've explained what an NFT and a DAO is. Will you just give me the elevator pitch for what the Dream DAO is? So give me the explanation of the Dream DAO.
Yeah, so you may be able to already guess, but at the Dream DAO, we train Gen Z to use Web3 to do good in the world. So basically, they care about problems. We teach them about Web3, how the technology works, and they learn how to apply the technology to the problems they care about.
Tell me a little bit about your journey. You said you didn't necessarily start with a tech background yourself. How did you end up founding Dream?
Part of this story is Civics Unplugged, which is the parent organization of Dream DAO. So in one sentence, Civics Unplugged is about training the next generation of civic innovators. Civic innovation is basically like, for civic problems, how can we be more innovative? And a civic innovator is like, we know that at Civics Unplugged, we're training the next heads of states and CEOs, but we want them to act much more effectively than the current heads of states and CEOs. So long story short, I was a part of their first fellowship class my junior year of high school. That's a 10-week program about civic innovation. And after that, I just kept staying engaged with the community after I graduated the fellowship, started taking on part-time roles. And then the second semester of my senior year, I was in Oklahoma. So even though it was COVID, it was in-person school, but I actually opted to do online the second semester. and finished all my classes in like 3 weeks because I just like wanted to get over with and started working full time for CU. And then at that point, they offered me a full time job on a gap year. And so I'm just wrapping up my first gap year and we'll be doing a second starting now. But one thing I want to mention about CU is that I think really frames up why I am so fascinated by DAOs is that Civics Unplugged was basically a DAO before we knew what a DAO was.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a digital community of young people from all around the world. We have an elected group of people who decide, we give them a pool of money and they decide what projects to fund. And we like vote on proposals and stuff, right?
Incredible.
I mean, just like
Yeah.
without blockchain, it was basically a DAO. And so when, we learned about Web3, we were like, who is better to fill this gap of training young people to use Web3 for good than the people who are basically running a DAO before, like without blockchain, right?
Yeah.
And have all these incredible young people like Oliver and like so many others in the Dream DAO that are eager to explore new opportunities to make change. And so I worked with a couple people at Civics Unplugged to co-found the Dream DAO. We took a lot of inspiration from our model at CU, but also have been experimenting with new things, which has been really fun. That's my story there.
I want to loop back to something that you were talking about, Madison, about the fact that a lot of Gen Z people have longed for the opportunity to make a difference, and they haven't necessarily had outlets for that.
I think that it's a complex answer and it depends on the individual you're talking about. So I know a lot of young people care about climate change, and that I think is by the nature of how timely the crisis is. So we know that for us, if we don't do something and if older people don't do something, like we're going to feel it, our kids are going to feel it, our grandkids are going to feel it. I mean, for me, like a little over a year ago, I went vegan when I learned about the impacts of animal agriculture on climate change and how much I could do by just like the meals that I eat every day. And what made me make that decision was thinking about my kids and grandkids. I'm like, oh, I want my kids and grandkids to live on a flourishing planet, and I want that for myself as well. And so I think for certain issues, it's more of a timing thing. But I also think that there is just this desire to realize what you're authentically passionate about. Like we've seen our parents work these 9-to-5 draining office jobs, and we don't want that. We want to do work that makes us come alive every day. And I think that maybe people have probably have wanted that forever, but we're at a unique point where it's being finally enabled. I mean, we have what's often called like startup culture of like basically running organizations in different ways that are more, I guess, like human aligned in some ways, or like not so dogmatic about like you have to be in the office every day and you have to get here at 9 and leave at 5. Just like more authentically aligning with what people really want to do and how they want to work. And so I think that's a part of it. Just having the culture that has enabled us to work this way. But Oliver, I want to hear what you think about this too.
Yeah, for me, Web3 is really so much about the people who are in it. It's really been like those connections I've made with so many different people working on these incredibly diverse range of projects. I think that's what excites me so much, is being able to see all of these different possibilities of what counts as work that is valuable in the world, that doesn't end up like the dystopian movies that we all watch. So really finding new ways of bringing that value to the forefront of what people can do.
What role do you feel COVID has played in generational shifts in thinking about all of this?
Oftentimes people run under the assumption that COVID just accelerated the way we're existing online, kind of the culture that Gen Z is adopting of doing more meaningful work. But I kind of wonder if some of it wouldn't have happened without COVID. Because what is really interesting about COVID is it was this massive scale on a scale like I've never seen before. I'm pretty young, but I would like to think
I've
on a
never
scale
seen
that's
before
larger,
either, and I'm old.
on a scale that's probably larger than has been before, of a meaning crisis. So I think that it changed everything. I think the future is a mix of both appreciating in-person and digital communities, because
Mm,
you meet certain needs from in-person communities and you meet different needs from digital communities.
mhm.
Find people and connect with opportunities that you wouldn't have been able to before. For example, if it wasn't for See You in the Dream DAO, I never would have left Oklahoma, right? So it's like
Right.
like bringing out this different side of me, but I still like love my family with all my heart and would not be
Mm,
anywhere without them. And so they meet different needs. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
like this
yeah.
beautiful balance that I think is the future.
What do you see, Madison, as the utility of Web3 and culture moving forward?
I see Web3 as the next phase of the internet and society. Right now, in this present moment of Web3, we have this really unique opportunity and responsibility to create a future we're proud of. Because if Web3 is the future of the internet and society, then whatever we create now, like, is the future, right? So
Mhm.
it's this huge responsibility and opportunity. Right now, a lot of Web3 has a negative perception. Some people see it as like scams and
Mhm.
just a bunch of tech bros. And so it's our job to shift that and to help the culture realize its potential by saying we want to embody what it means to be regenerative. Like,
Mm.
we're not going to get ourselves burnt out in our work. Like, we're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to take care of other people. We're going to create work cultures that are of care. We're going to do everything we can to embody our highest ideals of like decentralization and transparency.
Oliver, I'm wondering if you would speak to that future vision of what could be by explaining the term solar punk. What is solar punk?
The simple explanation is
Mm,
this genre and artistic movement of science fiction that's imagining a utopian future. And in that future, humanity is
mm,
really in harmony with our technology and nature. So um, it's humanity and technology and nature all interrelated and interdependent and not hierarchical.
and not pitting technology against nature, which I think
Yeah,
is really interesting.
yeah. And it's really that idea of service as well, that each of these pieces can
Mm,
serve each other. But for me, what solarpunk really means is two pieces, one being resistance, which is sort of that like punk aspect of challenging the
mm,
assumptions in how we decide our human society should function. And then the second piece being resilience. We can imagine this really beautiful, green, natural world that we really want to live in. So I really love solar punk because I think it can really just give people that motivation and just like the joy to actually build the future that we want, as opposed to trying to
mm.
scare you away from the future. Because I mean, the future is coming, and like we're gonna live in the future at some point. And I think it's really good to take that time to think deeply and care deeply about what it might be like.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Madison, I'd love for you to answer the question for two groups of people: an older person, maybe someone who's in business who is listening to this conversation, and a younger person who actually, is in that high school, college, Gen Z age group. How can these people connect with and support and get involved with Dream DAO?
Mhm. Yeah, for both, you can follow our Twitter. That's where we're most active at Dream DAO. If you look up Dream DAO, you should find it. I don't know the exact handle. But if you're a tech leader who has some knowledge about Web3, you can actually buy one of our NFTs. They're called Skywalkers. And we're having another NFT drop. It's kind of a secret. I don't know when this is coming out, but it's coming. The drop is in mid-June. So if you want to be a mentor type person, you can buy a Skywalker and apply. Or if you just want to support our mission, you can buy a Skywalker NFT and the funds all go to our mission. If you're a young person, you should check out Civics Unplugged, which is again the parent organization of Dream DAO. It's about civic innovation broadly. So if you are not ready to hop into Web3 yet, you should definitely apply to that. It's a 10-week fellowship. We run it twice a year. And then also Dream DAO. We'll be opening applications up in June as well. So those are the places to go.
Fantastic. Last question for you, Madison. You care so much about community, and I love how you're expressing that through participation in this DAO. Where did that love for community come from? What's a little bit of your backstory?
Yeah, so I kind of grew up with the value of community just instilled and almost like drilled into me because I'm from like rural Oklahoma where I had a graduating class of 80 people. So I mean, I grew up with all the same people that I graduated with, and in school I knew the names and faces of all of my teachers and students. And on the family side, like at home, all of my family lives within a 5-mile radius. And when I visit home and we have dinners, there's like 20 people at dinner. So and I'm so lucky, and sometimes I forget how lucky I am that every single day I get to engage with a group of people that I know like love and care about me, like through the Dream DAO and Civics Unplugged. And you just forget that like, oh, other people don't have this. Like it's so weird. And I feel just so grateful and lucky. And it's cool that the internet and Web3 is helping us realize the value of community and people more. It's really special.
Madison, Oliver, I love this conversation. I learned so much. I'm sure many of our listeners are learning new ideas, but thank you for your example. Thank you for the work you're doing to not only envision a better future, but actually work towards it. I'm really grateful. Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.